Fix in us thy humble dwelling, all thy faithful mercies crown. Jesus, thou art all compassion, pure unbounded love thou art. Visit us with thy salvation. Enter every trembling heart. Breathe, oh, breathe thy loving Spirit into every troubled breast. Let us all in thee inherit. Let us find the promised rest. Take away our mental sinning, Alpha and Omega be.
All right, let's take our hymnals this evening. And what is song number 1, Karen? 404. 404. The Solid Rock. 404.
When he shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in him be found, dressed in his righteousness alone, faultless to stand before the throne. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand, all other ground is sinking sand.
Well, Karen, me and you went for a ride on that song. Okay. Well, that's all right. We made it through. What's the next song tonight?
405.
Oh, right there. My faith has found a resting place, first and last on this. My faith has found a resting place.
My faith has found a resting place, not in device nor creed. I trust the ever-living one, his wounds for me shall bleed. I need no other argument, I need no other plea. It is enough that Jesus died, and that he died for me. My great physician is the sick, the lost he came to save. For me his precious blood he shed, for me his life he gave. I need no other argument, He died for me.
All right, thank you, Karen. I enjoy singing. You may be seated. And get my notes. A couple of things I want to start off here. And before we get into our actual lesson for tonight, I do want to say a couple of things. First, thank you to Kayla and to the missing Kaylee for painting the hall right there, the entire hallway, and the accent wall both inside and outside, and the bathrooms. Doesn't that look really nice? It really does, man. I came in, it was like a new place. I was like, whoa! The hall itself, even though it was painted the same color, looks really, really, really good. But then when I came and I saw that the color is called Let It Rain. Okay, so Let It Rain right there, and then in the bathroom as well, looks really, really good. So you like the color? Yeah, it's nice. Yeah, Let It Rain. So blessings of having a small painting company, right? So we can enjoy some other things there, right? Jeff got to go over and be a blessing at Rich's house this last week. So, secondly, I want to share an update on Kaylee, and then I want to have Danica give a testimony of something that happened to her with a friend as well. So Kaylee got saved, I think it was Tuesday, right, Kayla? Tuesday, and then on Wednesday or Thursday, I'm losing my days right now, but I think it was Thursday, she texted and said that she was going to be getting baptized. So we were really excited about that. And then she wants her boyfriend to come and get saved. So on Friday evening, after her boyfriend got off work, Kaylee had gone home, and they got ready, and they came in and met me at my office, and at like 5:20, 5:30, and I got to present the gospel to her boyfriend. His name is Austin, and he's 24 years old, and Austin got saved. Amen. Okay, so what a firework of praise to God there. I mean, just incredible. And after he got saved, they actually came over here to the church, and we played Moose, thanks to Viddy and Kathy for teaching me this epic game, okay? Okay, and everything else that we did, but Vinny's like, I didn't teach nothing like that, man. Okay, we had all kinds of animals, though. I had mosquito, okay, so we had all kinds of fun stuff, man. Shark, rhinoceros, okay, but what's that? Roadkill. We didn't do that one, okay? But be in prayer for them. His name is Austin Flamini, I think is how you say it. And then her name is Kaylee Holler. And she is, like, she's not just saying, oh, okay, I want to get baptized. Like, she said, and she goes, I can't come this Sunday. She was telling me because they had things scheduled. She goes, but from then on, I'll be coming to church. So it's like she's making a commitment. She has prayed a couple of times, and in her prayer, you know, just saying thank you for Kayla, for Jeff, for Tom. She keeps saying for these amazing people and how much they mean to me. So it's like God brought these people into our world so that she could be brought into His. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So pray. Obviously, Kayla, Jeff will have the most interaction with her, and you know, it's on the site discipleship. You know, it's really what it comes down to. It's on-site discipleship. So Friday evening when we started talking to Austin, and we were we had not yet begun, but we were definitely talking about Kaylee's salvation. Austin said, yeah, he goes, I even mentioned to her in the car on the, on the way into church or something like that, way into here, that your new self would not like your old self. And that was an unsaved person saying something about Kaylee, who had only been saved for 2-3 days by this point. So it really is exciting. It really is. It's a praise. It reminded me a lot of Danica's salvation and Willie's salvation, where you have somebody here who, really knows very little, although she was proud that she was a part of the Awanas when she was a kid. She was like, I've been doing Awanas. But really knows little about the scriptures and now is transformed into his kingdom. So thankful for that. So pray for their development and their growth. And Sunday they're getting baptized. That's interesting. Here they're coming into a church they've never been to, and their first Sunday they're just going to get baptized right away. So pray for them. Then Danica's got a story, and while you start telling, I'll get everything ready.
So a good friend of mine, her name is Nikki Sullivan. She is my age. I actually hired her at the Eagle's Nest about, almost 14 years ago as a hostess when I was the manager there. And then she followed me to Heritage Hills, and we've always been in the restaurant business together, but we were close because we're in the restaurant business. She always wanted to start her own DJ karaoke business, and she always told me I should start my own event planning business, and then we would work together and blah, blah, blah. So long story short is, since I left the restaurant business, we kind of lost touch for a while just because that wasn't my lifestyle anymore, staying out late and whatnot. But she kind of fell deeper and deeper into that black hole and started drinking very, very heavily, prescription drugs, and all just a mess. So I reached out to her just because I hadn't talked to her for a while, and I said, hey, let's go for lunch sometime, and ended up getting canceled. So I knew that was Satan working against me, because she's like, well, I don't get up, that early. And I was like, well, how about like 12 o'clock? And she's like, no, I'm still not up. And so I even tried like 2 o'clock. I said, how about 4? And it just kept getting canceled. And then we were supposed to have lunch about 2 weeks ago, and she still canceled on me again. And so I said, you know what, I'm just gonna let it go for a minute. And then me and Willie went up to the Poconos this weekend, and we were walking out to this one trail, and it walked down, and beautiful. We were on top of the mountain. There's a gorge below us, and there's silence, like Pastor Tom was talking this morning. And Willie had something to say. He was just like, isn't it amazing how God can literally move these mountains? And we were just saying how beautiful it was and everything. We had no service, and then we walked back out to the car, and we were getting ready to go find another trail to go hiking on, and I had 1 bar of service, and my friend Nikki started calling me, and I was like, that's weird. I said, well, I'm not going to be able to answer because I don't have any service. So it went to voicemail, and she left me a voicemail that brought tears to my eyes. And her
Hey, Judy, it's me.
Sorry, I thought you were saying yeah.
I've been thinking about you, and I love you, and I am finally in the right mental space where I can seriously sit down and try to regroup and get this lunch after after the holidays are over. But I just want to check in and say, hey, I've also been having this really spiritual awakening, and I know you've been going through sobriety and religion and finding yourself through Jesus, etc. And I would love to have a spiritual conversation with you. I just feel like I'm being very challenged here right now. And I just really miss you. I was at Heritage last night for Miss B's memorial, and it was just so spiritual. It's kind of I didn't know she was so heavily involved in NA and AA. So mixed the Heritage family with her AA and NA family that she's been a part of for most of her life was such a grateful, beautiful service to be a part of, and it just really made me miss you, especially with Billy and going over all the time to ask about you. I just really want to connect with you. I've been in such a dark place for the last couple of months, and finally giving up drinking and drugs has like really changed my heart, and I'm like on this really huge path right now. And I just would love to reconnect. So whenever you have space or time that we could do that, I would be so appreciative. And I love you, I miss you, and I hope you're doing so well. I'm so proud of you. Call me whenever, text me whenever, I'm here for you. I love you. Bye.
So now I guess she's ready for lunch.
So pray for Nikki, and that's real exciting. And then this is now the second week. Brian Carilla was here in church. Brian's been saved now for about 3 months. That's Marvin's mechanic, and that's exciting to see. And then, you know, Nick came. He's a coworker of mine, a new coworker of mine. And out of the blue, he said, I'm going to show up. And there he was today, Catholic background. And man, he got introduced by an anti-Catholic over here. So, but that's the goodness of God. He knew all these things would work together, right? And so that's good. So a lot happening there, isn't there? And that's only from what is mentioned. There's a lot that's happening. Not everything gets mentioned every single week, all the time, everywhere. So be in prayer and really focus in spiritually on the warfare that's after people's souls, and knowing that greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Okay? Benny? So, I'm encouraged tonight. In many ways, I almost canceled my message because of it, and just kind of stop and think on God's goodness, okay? I decided to move forward with it, but I did condense down some of my thoughts and focus a little bit here tonight on heaven. So, Colossians chapter number 1. Colossians chapter number 1. Tonight's message will be in English. This morning's special, I really enjoyed that. So, how long are you guys here for?
Wednesday.
You fly out Wednesday. Oh man, back to Cancun, right? Oh, is that where you are? Oh, okay, man. Well, man, we had this vision of like this resort that you're missionaries to. If you ever decide to go there, brother, I'll do a mission trip. All right. All right. So we are going to be talking tonight about this topic. So we just got over the resurrection. Well, not really over the resurrection, okay, but we just covered the resurrection. But I really feel that we are not fully grasping the scope of the resurrection. When I say we, I'm speaking of myself too, but I'm not speaking of just we as this group. I'm saying we as Christians at large. I don't fully recognize the power and the scope of the resurrection. So I'm going to pause, and I want today, I kind of have my title is All Creation Awaits Our Resurrection. All creation awaits it. And I'm going to read first Colossians chapter number 1, beginning in verse number 16. I want you to listen to this. This is very powerful. You can read along with me. It says, "For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers." Now we'll pause there because he's building a point and I want to build that point with him. I don't want to, it's kind of like following the Legos instruction, right? You can't skip too many points before you're lost when you're looking at this big giant, toy that you're supposed to build block by block. Okay? Paul says that by him were all what? Things created. Okay? Where are those things? In heaven and earth. Okay? All things in heaven and that are in earth. What kinds of things? Visible and invisible. Now, I'm going to throw us into the equation of things, right? Human beings. Caleb makes fun of me for not saying that correctly. And I was trying to do my ings at the end there. Okay, her and Holly have a mud pie throwing at me. Human beings, okay? So, now Larry's laughing, okay? Okay? So, I'm going to throw the idea, the concept that all things were created, including human beings, right? But human beings would be classified into what? The visible or the invisible? The visible. And there's aspects of the invisible that are within us, such as thoughts and spirits and souls and stuff like that. So we have an aspect of us that have an invisible nature to it. But overall, I would say that we'd be visible, right? We're fleshly. We're fleshy, earthy. Okay? But I know I've done this before, but I want to stop because he kind of even throws in some examples, and he gives examples of things that were created that were invisible, just kind of like in passing. And what are the examples that he creates? Principalities. Yes. For him. Well, all things were created for him. Okay? But he goes on to say principalities, right? And powers. And then before that, he says thrones and dominions. He gets into, this is really interesting. So we think of creation only as, you have to forgive me for speaking for everybody. Maybe there's somebody out here who doesn't think this way. But we kind of begin to think about creation as only, animals, giraffes, and elephants, and lions, and whales, and fish, and birds, and man. But in this passage, the Apostle Paul has a greater understanding of creation. And saying that God created everything for him, whether they're invisible or they're invisible, and then he goes immediately to dominions and powers and principalities and angelic creatures and thrones. This is pretty spectacular. And then he says this, all things were created by him and for him, as Larry noted. And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. That word consist means held together. Okay? How many of you have seen Louis Giglio's YouTube message out there where he talks about laminin? Nobody?
I've heard it.
You've heard it?
Yeah, because it's in the shape of a cross.
Yeah, it's in the shape of the cross. Laminin is the cell in the human body that literally, it's called the glue of the human body. It is what holds you together, and it's in the shape of a cross. It's just kind of an interesting thing. Louis Giglio, if you Google Louis not Loogie. Okay, if you Google Louis Giglio, he's some big name preacher out there, but he has a nice presentation about this verse, and it really is. It makes you stop and wow, and that's a pretty fascinating thing. It says, and he is the head of the body, the church. So now where did the church pop into this whole thing? I guess I'm trying to weave this passage together. The Apostle Paul is just expounding on things that he has created. Visible, invisible, and what is one of the things that he has created? The church. So he's just continuing right on. He's like, the church. He says, he is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he might have the preeminence. So he just skips a rock over light years, where he's like, Jesus created everything, visible, us, animals, invisible, principalities, thrones, dominions, powers, and the church. Okay? And then he says this, that in all things he might have the preeminence, for it pleased the Father that in him should all fullness dwell, and having made peace through the blood of his cross. Here's the redemption. Jesus died on the cross. Do we not preach that? That is the message. And here it says, having made peace through the blood of his cross, by him to reconcile what? All things. All things unto himself. By him, I say, whether they be things in earth or things in heaven. Study that verse out. There's no other answer. Jesus did not die on the cross for sinners alone. All things, whether they're in heaven or whether they're in earth, thrones, dominions, principalities, powers, the church, visible and invisible, all things in heaven and earth will be reconciled unto himself. So the Apostle Paul is making a very dynamic statement which goes farther than my understanding in the story of redemption, which is exclamated by the resurrection. So according to this passage, all things are going to be reconciled unto himself, not just us. Now that gets you kind of excited here. And I want to build this case up a little bit, and I want you to understand it. We know, we've used this passage before. If you want to flip there, it's in Romans 8. Okay? Romans 8:22, where it says that all creation, what? Let's go there. So that way we're not doing too much thinking on Sunday evening. It's almost time to retire. Romans chapter number 8. I'm going to begin reading in verse number 19. It says, for the earnest expectation, well, I'll read verse 22 and then we'll skip back to verse 19. Verse 22. It says, for we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. Now, what was the one word that you heard mumbled when I asked you what all creation does? Groans. And that's where I've always said too. Groans. But what does that verse actually say? It groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now. What is the imagery that the Apostle Paul is using in this passage? Birth. Not death. So what he's saying is that the old is actually in labor right now, and it's waiting to give birth to what? To the new. Now that changes my thoughts here a little bit on the resurrection. This is actually a very interesting verse. Now let's get back and let's put it into context a little bit. Verse number 19 says, for the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. What does that verse say? Right there in front of your very eyes, kind of like jumping off the page and smacking me. Who is eagerly or earnestly expecting something?
If you mean the preacher, one could surmise maybe that's us.
No, it can't be surmising us, and I'll get into that because the rest of the context. Sure, but it's not, because the rest of the passage doesn't align to it. So the creature is, I think we can be included into it, but all creation. All creation. The creatures that God has made, all of us, in fact, not just us, but the earth itself, it says later on in verse 22. So all creatures are earnestly waiting for what?
The new birth.
They're waiting for the new birth, but there's something specifically that they're waiting for. The manifestation of the sons of God. This is referencing the resurrection. All the creatures are earnestly expecting and waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. And then the very next verse says, for the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly. Now that's interesting. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same in hope. The earth and its creatures were cursed, not willingly. They were subjected to it by God. So God placed the entire creation under a curse, all of it. And just as much as you and I should be earnestly expecting and waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God, the resurrection, as much as we should be, the whole of creation, the animals are. The Bible tells us. Dave?
Well, I got a question. Now, it says about the manifestation of the sons of God. Now, is he talking about us or also the angelic realm? Because they're also called the sons of God.
I believe he's talking about us in context. And we'll see it a little bit more here. Okay? So what he's waiting for is the resurrection. The creature and the creation is waiting for the resurrection. They are waiting for the birth. Just as much as a mother is looking forward to the birth of her child, so the creature is looking forward to the birth. And that comes at the resurrection. Now, verse 21, because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. So they will be freed. The minute the resurrection happens, the creature and the curse upon the creation of God will be free. They'll be freed from their bondage of corruption. That's where verse 22 says. It says, for we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now, and not only they, but ourselves also. And this is where it switches now to the believer. So everything we are, we wait for it, right? But so does all creation. Now, Danica mentioned that she was out at the Poconos. She was looking across the valley of death, right? Because it's a creation that's cursed. And yet, in its cursed state, in its corrupt state, through her corrupt eyes and with her corrupt thoughts about it, they can still see some of the glory that's there. They can still see some of the splendor. I mean, think about it. It's all dead right now. We're in the middle of winter.
I mean, I was having
Okay, I'm arguing with the tree guy, so better. He's like, oh, not right, not true, not true. Not all dead, dormant. That's true. So my point here, though, is this. We live in a corrupted, cursed world, and yet we still can see the splendor of it. Now, this brings up a lot of questions, right? Because when you think about all creation, if they were put under the curse, that means that all of them existed prior to the curse. Does that make sense? So if they were prior to the curse, this is where a lot of people get theoretical and they say, well, why did God put fangs in lions then? Were lions carnivorous before the curse? Does anybody have any good thoughts on this? I mean, I read about it a little bit. I didn't want to waste too much time on this thought. I mean, what do you think about carnivorous animals? Were they carnivorous before the curse? Lawrence of York with his contribution. Jim?
Where it says the lion will lay down with the lamb, the lion ain't a flesh eater. Back then, I think they ate grass like the oxen.
Then why did God give them sharp teeth?
Or they eat a rabbit without teeth.
So this is where people, I don't have answers. I'm just letting you know. But it does give you a couple of thoughts. I think what Jim is doing is Jim is going to the Old Testament prophecies of Isaiah, and he's saying the prophets are saying that it's going to be how it was, and the lion's going to lay down with the lamb, therefore the lion's not going to be carnivorous, and I believe that that's actually the case from all that we can see in the scriptures. The only animal that I see under the curse in the millennium is the serpent, because the Bible says that he'll still crawl in the belly and he'll still eat dust during the millennium. But outside of the serpent, we definitely see all other animals, docile or, non-feral or whatever, okay? My thoughts are this. I mean, these are simple opinions, I guess, but, there's two things that either happen. Either A, after the curse or at the curse, shall I say, at the curse, God changed a lot from environment. He obviously kicked man out of the Garden of Eden, so he changed man's environment for sure. He removed the tree of life, and it could have very well be, too, that he altered the forms of some of his creatures to make them adaptable to their surroundings. So that's a very true possibility. Doesn't say anywhere in the scriptures that that's what happened, other than the fact that they're under a curse, and if they're under a curse, was the curse only invisible? In other words, he marked Cain, did he not? With a mark that if people saw him, they would not kill him. He also marked Ham, right? And what was the marking of that? How did God mark Cain in such a way that nobody would kill him? But I'd have to look at the scriptures. I don't believe so. I just think that he was marked. God says that he's going to mark him so that whenever a man saw him, he wouldn't kill him. And he was. My point is this: there was a change that happened to Cain. Does that make sense? And we don't know what it is, but God changed Cain. Interesting. Did that? I don't know. Dave?
I think as far as the animals and everything else, if the Lord was going to do that, which he did, he knew ahead of time, okay, if I change these animals this way, they're going to have to be changed to adapt to what their new living is going to be, or life is going to be. So he knew he had to change them because he was doing curse and everything, so he changed them according, so they would fit in with what they had to,
Yeah, I mean, I think God made in his omniscience, he made his creatures adaptable, right? I mean, all of us adapt to our environments to one degree or another. All of us. You ever seen couples, and the older that they get, the more they look like each other? It really is a true thing. I don't know how it does it, but they start looking like each other. So I'm like, It is scary. I don't know. Was that an insult, Karen? I think you're growing a beard, Karen.
He's saying they start acting like each other. Maybe it's worse.
I have the wrong couple sitting in front of me for this one, but nonetheless, I'll tell you, man. So, that's one possibility. The other possibility is this, that God gave animals like a lion sharp teeth because there's coconuts out there. Right? And coconuts need sharp teeth. I don't know. I'm just saying that God could have made them to actually devour something completely different and not something, soft and sweet or something like that. So, I mean, God could still, those teeth were not necessarily, if they were from original creation, those teeth were not necessarily meant to devour flesh. They were meant to devour something else, and they were used to devour flesh after the curse. Ray?
Was all creation eternal, or was it just man that was eternal?
That's the question.
If we take it to the animal kingdom, we can go to the fish and the sharks. And
That's the question. From the scriptures, it appears, and the ultimate thing is that man will live with God forever. That's the beautiful thing. We know that. It's very clear in the scriptures. But the more that I'm studying the scriptures, the more I'm starting to see that all creation was meant to live forever. I don't necessarily believe there was ever meant to be death. Now, that does not extend to a leaf falling down to the earth decaying. That does not mean that a human or that an animal could not deposit waste and it doesn't decay back into the soil to replenish the soil. So when I say no death, I'm not saying necessarily no cycle of, that sort of thing. But it does not appear that there was ever meant to be death, period, anywhere at all. Which is why in the last one, the burden of proof is actually on the person who does not believe that animals will be resurrected. It's just, when you see the power of the resurrection is, it's mind-blowing. We are his chief love, but his creation, as Genesis chapter 1 says, was very good, and he is not about to let Satan have 1 ounce of it. Now, does that mean, Bandit is going to be running around? Is he going to resurrect the animals? I mean, the burden of proof is actually on the fact that he's not going to. I mean, we know God has all that power. We know that the resurrection of every single person who has ever lived is going to take place. We know that. That's not questioned or debated. The Bible says, marvel not. Don't be amazed. When you see in 1 Corinthians 15, he talks about the different kinds of fleshes, right? And he's talking about there's scales, there's flesh of fish, there's flesh of birds, there's flesh of the terrestrials, flesh of the celestial. So he's talking about all these different fleshes. And he's talking about the resurrection in that whole chapter. The whole chapter is talking about his resurrection. Okay? And now here in Romans chapter 8, again, the Apostle Paul is saying that every creature is waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. Every creature. And it states even the earth itself is waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. And it says, and not only they, but ourselves also, which had the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves grown within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. So who is waiting in this passage for the redemption of our body, or the manifestation of the sons of God? Those are correlated here. All creatures, including ourselves. So the burden of proof is definitely on the person who says no animal will be resurrected. Because I'd say, well, I know God can, and he's resurrecting all humans. And it looks like they're waiting for us to be resurrected. and God has the power. He's not short on there. So for me to say, it's not out of this ballpark for me to say that the animals are going to be resurrected. And for that matter, things in this earth that have been destroyed are going to be resurrected and brought back. You think about volcanoes that have erupted and are gone. The Mount St. Helens, disintegrated. You think about the crater out there that the meteor fell onto. Okay? And go down the list. I mean, there's so many different changing, like Willie said, man, it's crazy to think that God can move mountains. He's done it all along. All along. So, can I take it one step further? Not only does it appear that he's going to resurrect all creatures, it kind of starts to look like he's going to resurrect his creation that are the works of our hands. Now that gets interesting. Ray's having fireworks right now. He's like, so, does God have power to call up from the dust of the ground a human being? He does. He'll do it again. When you die, you'll return to dust, and then from the dust, he'll call you back up again. From the passage here in Romans and the passage in Colossians and the passage in 1 Corinthians 15, does it not seem that we know he has power to do it, but does it not seem to indicate that there's more than just human beings that are waiting for the resurrection? It does. So, God's created raw materials. And with those raw materials, mankind has produced what? Things. Mankind has done things with his hands. And it appears that even those will be resurrected. You say, okay, that's enough. Well, let me pause, and I'm going to give you 3 thoughts to consider. Number 1, 1 Corinthians 15. We know that passage. We dealt with that last week. But let's turn there to the very last verse of that passage. The entirety of that chapter is the resurrection. Okay? And the very last verse says, therefore. Now, when you see therefore, you have to ask, what is therefore? Therefore. Okay? Therefore, because of the resurrection, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord. For as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. Now I want to stop and I want to pause for 1 second. The entirety of this chapter is not spiritualized. We love the spiritual, do we not? We just testified of the spiritual salvation of Pearl, the workings in Nikki, Kaylee, Brian, Carilla. We love this. We love to be able to say, Brother Ray Villarreal's missionary out in Mexico, and he's saving souls. Look, he's doing more than saving souls. Does that make sense? They're getting saved just like I'm getting saved. I have a new home in heaven. But listen, the moment I got saved, my eternal destiny has been changed. And I will be resurrected unto life to live on this earth that has been resurrected forevermore. So he's not just saving souls. It's almost an incomplete way of saying it. This is God's eternal redemption plan. And he goes at the end of this passage, he says, so because you know that you're going to be resurrected, because you know that, then be steadfast, unmovable, and always abound in the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord. It almost seems as though in the context of the resurrection that he's saying, so work for God, Because you're going to be able to present the work that you do now to Him forevermore. You will be alive and in your flesh. So work now, because you'll see it later. That's the actual application. The theology or the doctrine is you're going to be resurrected, you're going to be resurrected, you're going to be resurrected. So the practice is, because you're going to be resurrected, work. Work. And your labor is not going to be in vain in the Lord. Now, that's the light version. The next step up would be 1 Corinthians chapter 3 says, now if any man build upon a foundation, gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest. Every man's work shall be made manifest. Every man's work will be revealed. That's 1 Corinthians 3:12. Every man's work shall be revealed. Okay? For the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. Now, how is the world going to be destroyed? By fire. By fire. And what will be destroyed? All impurities. Everything not righteous will be completely destroyed. And what will remain? If any man's work abide which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. In other words, God is going to destroy this world, and yet you're going to be preserved. God knows how to preserve and resurrect from the ashes mankind, and He also knows how to refine the works of His. In other words, I don't think it's far-fetched at all in any way, shape, or form that if Willie were to take a piece of wood out of love for God and make something and give it to somebody because he was serving God, I don't see it impossible in any way, shape, or form that when this world is destroyed, that God can resurrect that very piece when He resurrects Willie, and when He resurrects all the other animals, that He could resurrect also the very thing that Willie made using the resources that God has done for a testament to the Lord. Now this is again something that I'm not going to build a major doctrine on. We don't need to build a major doctrine on it. The major doctrine that we need to build on is the resurrection of the believer because of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But if God can resurrect all His creatures, and if God can resurrect everything, and He teaches us that all of our work will be made manifest, that because of the resurrection, that your work is not in vain, then what you do for the Lord, man-made things are only man-made in the sense that they take God's creation and fashion it. Does that make sense? There's not anything really man-made. It's God-made. But man takes it and he has dominion over these things. Now you think about that. What are man-made things in different realms? Music. So let's pause for 1 second on music. Man made the songs Living by Faith. I care not today what tomorrow may bring. Do you believe that song could be eternal? I believe it can, and I believe it will. God made music. He put the ability for music to be there. Do you believe that the Hallelujah chorus would be sung? Sure. And thousands more for all eternity. And if music, what about art? Do you believe that do you believe that one of these kids led by the Lord to draw a little picture and to give a little note to you that encourages your heart at the right time, could be resurrected in the great day and put on display for all eternity for the glory of God. Does God have the power for it? He does. Does it not fall inside the scope of resurrection? It does. Larry?
All of these things go into the realm of spiritual. You can't eat music, you can't taste it, you can't feel it, you can't see it. But it's very spiritual in what it does to us. Taking it out,
That's true. I'd take it a step further, and I'm starting to, as the more that I study the scriptures, the more I'm saying, man, that if Vinny were to gift me a refrigerator out of love for the Lord, that in the great day, somewhere in the grand display of God's eternal space for us, will be a refrigerator that was bought for the Lord. I truly am starting to believe that. Revelation chapter 14, verse 13 says this, Blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth, yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Now, what I'm battling right now with a machete as I'm chopping through your thoughts, I'm battling thousands of years of spiritualizing everything. In fact, when I started this whole series, I was battling the concept of spiritualizing heaven to this place where it's an eternal cloud, where heaven is non-physical. Does that make sense? We've made heaven non-physical in our culture today. And so when I started this series, everything was non-physical. And now as I'm going along and along and along, the more that I'm going more and more and more in, I'm starting to realize, first of all, it's very physical. That's what the resurrection is. We're going to have physical bodies. Jesus has physical bodies. His creation is physical. He's redeeming his creation. He's going to reconcile his creation. It seems as though all flesh is going to be resurrected. And it seems as though all works of the flesh that were done for his glory are going to be resurrected. The power and the scope of the resurrection is starting to be the grand finale that we are waiting for. That we are waiting for. Psalm 90, verse 17. Says, let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us. Moses is writing this. Let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands establish thou it. Moses is praying and he's saying, establish the works of our hands. You know what the word establish means? Make permanent. The works of our hands. Most people take that passage and they say, that gives you the license to pray, Lord, bless my business. Lord, bless me as I go to do this today. You know, would you put your hand of blessing on what I'm going to do today? Oh, what have you just done again? You spiritualized something all over again. When Moses didn't really spiritualize it. He said, Lord, what we build with our hands, would you make it permanent? Now think about for 1 second. What did Moses build with his hands? And not Moses, but Moses and the Israelites. Think of the tabernacle. All the pieces of furniture inside there. Okay, think about that for 1 second. Remember Bezaleel, the guy that God filled with his spirit to do these things? You can't tell me that there's not going to be those instruments forevermore. You say, well, what if somebody melted it down and it's all gone? Does God have power to resurrect it? He does, and he will. It seems as though, church, This gets exciting. It seems as though not only is the scope of the resurrection you and you, but it's all his creation, visible and invisible. You can't even see the things that he's going to resurrect. From the farthest of far galaxies that we can't see with our own eyes, and yet are bigger than the galaxy that we live in by a long shot. They were affected when Adam sinned, and they will be corrected when the second Adam resurrects all. All things will be subdued under his feet. Doesn't this give your mind freedom? It really does. It gives you the ability to say, can God? Yes, God can. Then why won't God? It was his when it was on earth. If I gave that $20 bill to Ray when he needed it out of love for the Lord, you can't tell me that I did something that was physical that will not be seen forever. And the Bible says, and this is something I'll get into later, but the Bible says that it will be your reward. And everybody wants to say, oh, we're going to be casting our crowns at Jesus' feet. That comes from one passage in Revelation where there's elders who take their crowns and they cast them at his feet, and it seems as though it's more of a reverential type deal. But everywhere else in the scriptures, Jesus says, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Isn't that interesting? I read that not too recently in a book. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. So the things that you do right now for him, it appears that you're laying them up forever, and that they will be resurrected in that day, and they will be yours to enjoy for all eternity. Vinny? I failed as a pastor. Yeah. 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 Amen. I guess the end of this message, right, and I went a little long, so forgive me. I think the end of this message is this. Try to stop spiritualizing everything and taking away the physical component, because God made a physical world, and that physical world was perfect and was very good, and humans were part of it. And when Adam sinned, the curse fell on them, and the curse was spiritual and physical. And God reconciled all things on the cross. And all things will be put underneath his feet. The last enemy is death. And so he has conquered the spiritual element, no doubt. There is a spiritual side to this conversation for sure. What I'm saying is it's not only the spiritual, but it actually The scope of the resurrection, the scope of the redemption is far greater than what you and I are giving it credence. From all points of Scripture, it seems like there's going to be a whole lot more physical redemption than we ever imagined. So lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Work, labor for the Lord is not in vain. Do good. Give away the things of this earth, right? As to make yourself friends of the world. Go down the list, all these things, and I'm telling you, the Lord will reward you, physically reward you in heaven. All right, we will close with a word of prayer, and we'll have our brother missionary. Would you mind closing us with a word of prayer?
Gracious Lord, we are grateful.